Sup guys, you ever wonder what happened to Videl and Hercule in the future timeline, or Mr. Satan if you prefer? Personally, I like both names. Of course, the out-of-universe explanation is that they didn't exist at the time the History of Trunks special was written. But in-universe, we never get anything, not even in Dragon Ball Super. I think it's pretty likely that they are dead. I mean, that's pretty grim, but Hercule's fans would pressure him into confronting the androids, and Videl doesn't seem the type to lay about and do nothing while they're out there. But them just being dead isn't very interesting, and it doesn't make for a good story, so how about we bring them into the events of the History of Trunks special and maybe beyond. Heads up, this first part is mostly going to be set up. Our story begins in age 767, shortly after the androids began their onslaught against humanity. Most of the Dragon team are still alive by this point, although Goku still died to the heart virus, and Vegeta had been one of the first to fall to the androids despite being a Super Saiyan. The human Z-Fighters had been doing their best to lie low and help people where they could. They knew they didn't have the power to kill the androids, but they were enough of a diversion for civilians to escape. Which was why they were here now. The androids had attacked Orange City, and while Tien, Yamcha, and Krillin were fighting 18 outside, 17 had taken interest in some place called the Satan Castle Dojo, huh? Cool name. Too bad these guys don't live up to it. The students of the dojo, of course, stood no chance against the android, and 17 cut through them like they were nothing. The young Videl had been told to hide in one of the back rooms, but she couldn't just sit by and listen to this. But, of course, she was no match for the android, who sent her flying with a flick of his wrist. Huh, you've got guts, kid, but it's all over now. 17 held up one finger, but before he had a chance to fire the blast, Hercule punched him across the face. It didn't do anything to him, but it did get his attention. Videl, run, now! That was a bad Mr. Satan, but that's the best I got. Oh, look, what a caring father. 17 took a hold of Hercule's wrist before crushing his hand. He yelped in pain, but through it all he kicked 17 as hard as he could, which also didn't do anything. I said now! Videl did as she was told and ran. 17 smirked before blasting a hole through Hercule's chest and tossing his body to the ground. He dusted off his hands before turning to where Videl had been, but before he could give chase, he was thrown into a wall by a tri-beam from Tien. Keep running! Get as far away as you can! Tien shouted before he was winded by a punch from the android. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want me to kill you first? Videl didn't hear the rest of that conversation. She'd already done as she was told, but her escape was blocked by 18. She was coming right at her. And then she swerved upwards, and in place of 18 coming at her was a yellow ball of energy. Oh no, a kid! Yamcha swiped his finger upwards so the ball followed after 18. Keep heading north. You'll run into a short, bald guy. He'll keep you safe. The spirit ball made contact with 18 and there was a mighty explosion. Videl was running, but she was sure she saw 18 fly out of the blast. She didn't even seem affected. Videl continued to run for a while until she ran into the man the guy with the scars had been speaking about. He carried her away from the city and met up with a young boy around her age, as well as a group of survivors. Before she even had a moment to catch her breath, an explosion rang out from the city and the bald man turned to look. Oh no, that's where Yamcha and Tien Shinhan are fighting. I need to go help them. Krillin, you can't. You'll get hurt. You'll die. That's not important. Take these people somewhere they'll be safe, and then go find Bulma. I'll buy as much time as I can. You need to get the Dragon Balls before they get to Piccolo. Gohan clenched his fist before nodding. Our best bet is to wish back Vegeta and hope he can do something, but if that fails, you're our last hope. You at least need to survive. Krillin knew he was likely going to his death, but he'd do the best he could. At least these people would survive. Krillin took off towards the city, and that was the last time Gohan ever saw him alive. Gohan brought the group of civilians to Capsule Corp, where they were escorted into an underground bunker before going to find Bulma. With the help of the Dragon Radar, it didn't take them very long to find the Dragon Balls, and just as they were nearing the 7th, they heard the voice of Kami in their heads. Hurry up if you can. Piccolo is currently engaged with the androids in combat. If you don't make the wish soon, I fear it will be too late. Unbeknownst to the pair, they were being followed by a group of old enemies. That girl stole my wish once before. It's time I return the favor. But boss, what about those rampaging machines we heard about over the radio? I'm sure it's nothing I need concern myself with. Now stay quiet. Piccolo, along with Chaozu, were the only warriors left, and they were doing their best to hold off the droids. They were an unorthodox but surprisingly effective team. Chaozu's psychic abilities couldn't stop the androids for long, but it did slow them down enough for Piccolo to get a few good hits in. Bulma and Gohan summoned Shenron and were about to wish back Vegeta, Yamcha, and Tien Shinhan, but before they had a chance to speak, a voice rang out from the distance. "Make me and my henchmen younger!" It was Emperor Pilaf, but when had he started to follow them? "Your wish is granted." And with that, the Pilaf gang began to shrink until they were reverted back to infants, wasting the final wish on the Earth's Dragon Balls. Shortly after this, the androids finally managed to kill Piccolo, taking Kami and the Dragon Balls out with him. Chaozu attempted to run but was caught by the throat by 18. With no other options, he self-destructed, but that did little more than damage her jacket. The next few years continue on as in the original, with Gohan becoming a Super Saiyan. When that happened we don't know, and he became the Earth's best and only defender. He's not strong enough to actually defeat the androids, but they won't kill him because he's the most fun they get. Videl herself spent the past few years trying her best to remain under the radar while helping whoever she could. She knew she was no match for the androids directly, but she was still a pretty skilled martial artist, and she was a lot stronger than a normal human. She'd also been trying to find this golden warrior she'd heard about, someone who was supposedly able to go blow for blow with the androids. She had heard a lot about him, and she caught the occasional glimpse of him, but he never stayed long enough for her to talk to him. From other people's accounts, she'd gathered that he wasn't actually able to beat the androids, but they never killed him. So, she decided her best shot to talk to him would be to catch him after a battle. She heard on the radio about the androids attacking East City, and she was off. Hopefully she'd be able to save a few people, and if she was lucky, she'd get to speak to the Golden Warrior. Unfortunately, things were all but over by the time she arrived. The city was in ruins and it was eerily quiet. She'd been too late to do anything. She found an unconscious young man amongst the rubble in a sorry state. His leg seemed to be broken and he had quite the sizable gash on his forehead. On top of all that, he had a piece of rebar stuck in his arm. She pulled him out of the rubble, and he seemed to wake as she moved him. Or at least, he was half awake. "Try not to move. We need to get you out of here, and then I'll try to stop the bleeding." "There's no need for that." He pulled the piece of metal out of his arm and tried to get up, but then immediately fell over. "Could you pass me one of the beans in that bag over there? There should be 4 left." Videl didn't really understand the request, but she did as he asked and gave him one of the green beans. To her surprise, he immediately stood up, and even the cuts on his body had closed. "Thanks a lot, miss. You're a lifesaver. Literally." What just happened? You were at death's door a second ago." Gohan took a moment to explain the sensu beans, but Videl seemed skeptical, even though she'd just seen them work. "If they're so useful, how come I've never heard of them?" "Well, they've always been pretty rare. It takes months to grow just one, and the androids killed the only people who knew how to do that, so unfortunately those 3 are the last ones in existence." "Can't you just plant them?" "Well, I wouldn't know how to keep the plant alive, and I kinda need them against the androids." "The androids? Wait, are you the Golden Warrior? But your hair is black." Well, I dyed it recently." That wasn't a very convincing lie. Where would he even get hair dye these days? Gohan said goodbye and turned to leave, but before he could, Videl grabbed his shoulder. She asked him to let her help, but he just told her it was too dangerous for her. As if to prove herself capable, she attempted to kick Gohan, who blocked it with one arm. She was pretty strong for a human with no training, but he didn't have time for a protege. She attempted to punch him, but he caught her hand. He didn't have to try very hard to block her attacks, of course, but she clearly wasn't going to give up on this. "Fine, you can help. When I'm not fighting, I spend most of my time in a cave near West City. Find me there, and I'll teach you a little bit. But no fighting the androids until I say you're ready." Videl agreed to these terms, and Gohan sighed in relief. This girl was even more stubborn than his mother. "Alright, now, can I take you anywhere on your way home?" Videl told Gohan where to go, and he took off carrying her. The place seemed familiar. Had he been here before? It was a partially destroyed building in a city the androids had already been to. She hadn't bothered to rebuild anything, and the androids couldn't sense energy, so they didn't see any point in coming back here. The Satan Castle Dojo? Yeah, it was my dad's. He was eccentric, but he always did his best for me. He was strong too, but that didn't seem to matter against the androids. Sorry to hear that. Gohan and Videl chatted for a few minutes about what Gohan would be teaching her before Gohan headed home. Well, to the cave he'd been calling home. He was, admittedly, a little surprised that she'd been serious about tracking him down all the way out here, but a few days later he got a visit from her, who told him that she'd been searching for him for 2 days now. Once she had rested a little, they got to training. Progress was fairly slow, but by the end of the day she had mastered the basics of ki control, and she was even able to fly, albeit slowly. She picked things up rather quickly, but Gohan wasn't exactly the best teacher. He didn't really have any experience. He knew she wouldn't progress much with just him teaching her. He was just far too strong to spar with her properly. Maybe Trunks would be a better sparring partner for her? He did have one idea. It was a long shot and he hadn't seen the guy in a while, but it was time to call on an old friend. And that's where I'll leave things for now. Do you think Videl could actually make any difference in the fight with the androids? Who's this old friend Gohan has in mind? Until next time, be sure to leave a comment and subscribe if you want to, no pressure. Anyway, have a nice day.